I'm Z. I am on YouTube and Twitter under Kidology. I make video essays and I stream all about everything and anything to do with modern society. So primarily relationships.
Topic number 1. Should we discourage sex work? Should people who do sex work be stigmatized? Kidology, go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say the ultimate blind eye is that men are buying sex and that men have been buying sex from women since the beginning of time. I mean, the easiest way to discourage sex work is to discourage the clientele. Like, that is the obvious way to go about it, because sex work is intrinsically tied to the cost of living and to men being prepared to buy sex.
How would you discourage it?
The obsession, I think, with
there's certain
sex
countries
workers
that have tried that, right? But they weren't as successful as they originally thought. Now that we're looking back decades later, like Sweden and Norway tried to outlaw the sale, but outlaw the purchase, but not the sale, correct? Is that correct, Kidology?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think it's still
ended up causing
currently.
It ended up causing, from my understanding, more sex trafficking. The decrease in price per sexual transaction, so sex workers were making less money, the sex industry to become more underground, and for the women to have less ability to actually, the women within the trade. Now, the trade did decrease significantly, which was part of the goal, so that part was successful. However, the women in the trade are having horrific experiences. Now, from my understanding, there's not a ton of research. The only study that I found had like an N value of 30, which is pretty weak, but it's still pretty intensive individuals, like study into those 30 individuals.
Yes, it's intensive, but I would say that with anything, when you're making such a fundamental revelatory change, it's going to take a very long time. I mean, in the same way that it took a very long time for the industry to be built up in the way that it's been built up, dismantling it and actually finding the right ways of doing so are going to take a lot longer than 10 or so years. So,
well, no offense, but if we've been doing this since the dawn of time, why does it take such a long time for us to understand how to do it? Isn't there something intrinsically problematic with sex work and such we even have to have this conversation? No one has to argue whether or not we should construct buildings.
I just don't think.
What is it about sex work?
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a historian, right? But I don't think most societies, especially early societies, outlawed it at all, right? In fact, some celebrated it in a lot of cases.
Yes, I mean, the Greeks.
Also, I take issue with the example. We argue all the time about constructing buildings in the United States. It's like one of the biggest things we fight about.
Do we argue about the profession or where we construct it? Because in this case, we're arguing about the profession,
and even
not whether
how.
or not
Have you
where
not
the
seen
woman
those?
can do
It's
it.
like those tweets, and I know Twitter source, right? Twitter posts with like showing different types of architecture and trying to argue which is better. Like, this happens all the time.
That's more subjective. We're talking about the actual profession of being a sex
Isn't
worker.
this subjective as well?
Yeah, if you don't think
you
think
mean like
could
the
do sex,
aesthetic versus like
sex work is aesthetic.
No one's arguing that you shouldn't be a grocer. No one's arguing that you shouldn't be a lawyer. We're currently arguing that we shouldn't.
I think you shouldn't be a sex worker. I'm okay with sex work 100% if we have a world where we have sex workers go to college the way a psychologist goes to college or a therapist. Because at the level of intimacy, the reason that a therapist has to learn how to set all these boundaries and protect themselves and to protect the client, protect both themselves and the client, because it's a very dangerous situation because of the high level of intimacy. And sex work, you're having an even higher, that's why it's so hard to become a sex therapist.
Yes, this was a very unamusing conversation between the three at the top, Smithwick and Bazef, but I guess thank you anyway. I think far too much attention is paid to the sex workers as opposed to, I think, the most important demographic, which is their clientele. In answer to Smith about sort of qualifications in sex work and sort of defining sex work, there are, at least in the UK, individuals who are sex therapists who charge at the moment $2,500 for one session at a time with them. If you're going to get any man to average man, especially young men, to pay that kind of money, you're barking up the wrong tree. I think that morality ultimately doesn't pay the bills, and morality is really not about the kind of escapism which most men go to OnlyFans for. It's really not that deep, I don't think. So I think we're just focusing on the wrong subjects in terms of the question as to should we discourage sex work. And I think ultimately we should care more about the wider socioeconomy and also about why women are going into sex work. The main reason being is that, at least with prostitution, they're single mothers with kids and they don't have any interfamilial connections primarily, at least based on recent data. So yeah, I think the conversation was disappointing.
Next topic is, are incels oppressed/marginalized, and what should we do to help them? People like Jordan Peterson have argued that we should have government programs to give men girlfriends, and some people say that they just need to try harder and that there's nothing systemic holding them back whatsoever.
I think that we really have a great misunderstanding about the actual demographics of incels and actually ultimately what we can do to help them. And I also think that we are riding a fine line between saying, yes, that incels are marginalized and oppressed, and then on the other hand, using that to validate a lot of the sort of victimhood complex which they take on, at least the most vocal ones, the most overt ones, and also their lack of taking responsibility for, I think, especially their mental health. But I do think that mental health services need to do a lot better in terms of helping incels, and that ultimately going online and having their sentiments of being perpetual victims of modern woman by people who are making a lot of money off this demographic is not helping in the least.
Cool. Destiny.
I think that people make a mistake when they say like oppressed is the same as has a shitty time. I think that I don't think incels are oppressed. I don't think that ugly people are oppressed, because that implies there's some like external group that's like applying pressure or exploiting them. I think that it just sucks if you lack the social skills to find a significant other or to talk to, in the case of incel men, to talk to women. That sucks, but I don't know if there's like an active campaign of oppression against these people, like institutional or implicit or otherwise.
All right. Wake.
So yeah, I think that while I may not go so far as to say oppressed, I would say that they face some systemic issues. Therapy, for one. A lot of therapists will refuse to see incels, especially female therapists. They just won't work with them at all, which limits the access that incels have towards what they need to help them, which is therapy. Therapy itself seems to not to have much of an effect on incels as well, likely for that reason as well as others. There's also a lot of overlap between neurodivergency and inceldom. There is a huge kind of a Venn diagram where these things combine. It absolutely is a marginalized group. Like, we don't use incel as an insult for nothing, right? Like, we use it all the time. It is very much a stigmatized group. It's something where you are not welcome in a lot of communities if you identify yourself as one, and for good reason in certain cases, right? These people need our help. Life has failed them, and they have made some poor choices in some cases. What that help looks like, I don't think the government should do programs or, assign girlfriends or anything. But I do think there needs to be at least a societal effort to help these young men, because it's a problem, and it's a problem for all of us.
All right. Thank you, Wick. Base.
So I think I do agree with a few of the people here that I would never use the word oppression for incels. I don't think they're oppressed, but they are certainly a marginalized group. As Wick said, you can use it as an insult. You can even end the conversation of any legitimate grievance you may have in any tough time you've had with dating or relationships by saying, "Oh, don't act like an incel." I mean, from that point alone, if people are just afraid to even voice their frustrations or even talk about how they feel, at least they be compared to like someone that's a killer, or be compared to someone that is unhygienic, who is ugly, otherwise unpleasant, then I would say absolutely, they're definitely marginalized people. As far as helping them is concerned, I think helping them comes in two ways. One, the incel has to help himself at first. but the other half has to come from the other half of our species, which is going to be some young ladies are going to have to work with some of these young men to table their expectations. I think everyone has to do something to solve this problem. So
Thank you, sir. And then Lauren.
Yeah. Many people already got into it, the oppression marginalization issue. Yeah, obviously there's no laws oppressing people just because they're incels. However, they're marginalized in communities. They lack social skills. It's a really odd phenomenon that you come into the technological age, especially when you see apps like Tinder and other dating apps where women are frequently finding matches no matter what they look like, whereas men, a large percentage of them never get any matches whatsoever, and it's about 5 to 10% of the men who are getting 95% of the women. So there is definitely an issue with these people being marginalized, as opposed to how do we help them. I guess a lot of that would just have to be with being honest with them about what is causing them to not be sexually attractive to women, and working on the issues in society which are making men not very sexually attractive. In my opinion, and it is backed by research, but I have heard other people disagree, that it is lack of testosterone, and working on your masculinity can help.
All right, thank you. Nobody's used their shootout yet, just to let you guys know. Those are there so that if you want to have a back and forth with somebody without any interruptions, that's there so you have 3 minutes uninterrupted with that person.
all right, so what exactly should the young men do in order to improve their position with women?
Improve social skills and work on people skills that they need to be more attracted to the opposite sex. Practice talking to them, practice flirting with them, practice those types of things.
And why do you think that hold on, why do you think the
watching
incel
streams
hasn't already come to these conclusions?
What? Well, it's, in my opinion, like being good with women is easy in the same way that like losing fat is easy. Like I think we all know what to do. It's just really hard to do it, right?
So you're saying that it's simple.
Yes. If you stick a guy, you put him in an environment with a lot of women, and they talk to each other over a period of time. You learn how to do it, and that's how every single environment in all of human history has worked. It's why people in school, why coworkers, it's why anybody in like any community group of friends, like yeah. But I think the issue is that like I think there are parts of our society that are like highly sexually dimorphic right now. So like for instance, if you are, let's say that you were like you were a nerdy kid in high school and grade school, you didn't talk to very many women because you were kind of shy. Then you go to like into comp sci in college, you've got 3 women in your class. The odds are even worse than Tinder. And then from there, you start working at a tech company where there are also like 3 women working. You're in a really, really, really rough spot. You're no longer forced to be near women because you don't have school anymore. You're not going to be forced to be near women at work because you work a tech job. And now like the opportunity for you to develop those socialization skills are like almost nothing. So I think it's a really rough spot to be in. Yeah.
Well, that's ultimately more. Well, go ahead.
So I was going to, in answer to your question, I was going to say that in terms of both incels and the wider society, it's laziness and fear. It's so much easier to just blame either incels for their problems, or it's so much easier for incels to blame women and society and feminism for their problems and to not do anything. It's the same with like the obesity epidemic. It's far easier to just blame everything else rather than actually do the work and take responsibility yourself. And it's also very scary. It's scary to interact with people. It's scary to interact with incels. It's human nature, unfortunately.
I don't think it has.
You're doing the person
assigning blame. I don't think it has to do with assigning blame. So you're saying that the incels blame the women, everybody who is looking at the incel problem blame the incels themselves and say that they have to fix it. But it has to do with the person who has the problem. It doesn't matter who's at fault. Society in general is probably at fault. Technology, just the way the world has developed. No in particular person or group of individuals is at fault. However, the people with the problem are the ones who aren't getting laid. So they're going to be the ones who have to figure out the solution. Now, should we help them as a society? I would like to help them as a society. What can we do? We have to encourage them to change things that would help them resolve their problem. So that's why they're the ones that have to make the change, not necessarily because they're the ones that cause the problem.
Two things, just real quick. Two things. I absolutely agree, right? That at the end of the day, like you asked, like why do we ask men to solve this problem? Because at the end of the day, the incel is the only one who can solve their problem. There is nothing that you, I, or society can do to help them become better at women if they are not willing to put in the work. I can't make someone skinny, but I can teach them how and the processes they need to go through in order to become so, to use that analogy. I think, though, that Kidology is also right in that it's far easier just to blame society or blame others. And while at the end of the day, it is kind of a two-way street, you can only control your half of it. And if you even a guy with an ugly mug like me, right? If you can be personable and it's a skill you can learn, then you will up your odds. I do want to ask though, I wonder if we see this rise kind of in inceldom and loneliness in general across the board is due to the fact that we can't really flirt or date and work as we used to. That is highly discouraged these days for probably good reasons. And two, a lot of the communal infrastructure that we've had is just not there anymore or not used anymore. No one's going to church anymore. No one's going to the mall anymore. We're all isolated inside all the time. And I think that almost more than anything else is making it so that young men aren't learning how to socialize with women like they would have when I was growing up.
Definitely. And I think the worst part is dating apps, because dating apps ultimately cater to men as visual creatures. And so women go onto dating apps and they have to play this game, which really in real life, in terms of attraction, women don't play. Women don't find men like physically attractive, like from the get-go. It takes a long time, usually building over friendship, over like a lot of communication.
No, I fundamentally disagree.
So yeah, well, can I just, it's not ultimately in the favor of men, even though ironically it was created for men, specifically for wealthy men to hook up. And so incels really need to get off of these dating apps, specifically Tinder, and get off this obsession, this really brain dead obsession with statistics from OkCupid and Tinder about looks and about attraction, because it isn't helping them, and it most definitely isn't helping women in terms of finding the men who they desire.
I think Tinder is awesome. I think we need to stop demonizing Tinder.
No, Tinder is awful.
People blaming Tinder, it's like people saying that like Magnum condoms suck because like most guys like can't fit into the Magnum condom. Just don't buy the Magnum condom. Nobody's forcing anybody to use Tinder if you don't want to. I don't know why people run onto Tinder where the ratios are, it's like, what is it, like 80% women? No, it's even, or I'm sorry, 80%.
No, it's 75.
It's even more less out of that. It's like five. It's like five. Yeah, it's like 5 to 1, right? So of course your odds there are going to be really, really, really bad. And then a lot of women on Tinder aren't even really meeting guys there anyway. Sometimes because they're too shy to meet, or they'll only swipe a little bit and then log off. Like, don't blame Tinder. There are a lot of guys who work tech jobs and don't meet women anywhere, and Tinder is literally their only outlet. And sometimes for them it does work. I got lots of because I used to do this thing where I got lots of emails from people like, "Hey, I work a tech job. I don't go out anywhere. I live in San Francisco. I met a few girls off of Tinder, and it actually worked for me." So I don't know why people are so relentless to shit on Tinder. If Tinder doesn't work for you, just don't use it. That doesn't mean we have to demonize it and blame all the other problems. Like if you get rid of Tinder, it doesn't magically fix any of the problems that we talked about. Not a single issue that we talked about goes away if we get rid of Tinder. It's all still the exact same.
No, okay, I need to use a shootout.
The issue would be
shootout or whatever with Destiny on this, because I think he's just wrong here. While I would agree, right, that we should absolutely. Is that how this works? I just say shootout and then I go. I don't know.
Yeah, you want.
Well, we respected it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know. So
is that what you want?
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm doing it. I keep saying it. Like
I didn't hear you say it. I heard you say you wanted to talk to Destiny. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Shoot out.
Yeah,
Destiny,
whatever.
3 minutes.
Okay. Fair enough. So I think that while you're right, Tinder isn't the sole factor at play. I think Tinder and companies like that absolutely incentivize people to get on them in a way that is unhealthy. And while we can't blame them entirely for doing this. They want to make money. We can point to it as kind of like an empty calorie effect that it is advertised as a way to meet women when in reality it does not work for most men, or at least doesn't work as it's advertised. And I think that's very harmful. I think that we should put some blame on Tinder for this and on companies like Tinder, because they are misrepresenting their product, and they are creating their product to be addictive and draw people in and get you stuck there. And I think that's a problem.
No, I mean, like, most people, if you put in a little bit of work, can meet at least one person on Tinder. That's easily possible. I think it's totally fine to advertise it that way. There's a lot of guys who wouldn't meet girls otherwise who are able to meet girls on Tinder. I think it's totally fine. The app does exactly what it is supposed to do. Now, do men have trouble because there's a lot more men than women? Yeah, sure. But that's not a reason to demonize the product. And again, to reiterate the point I said before, if we get rid of Tinder, it doesn't fix or solve a single one of the problems that we were talking about before. It just makes the people that benefit from Tinder worse off.
I actually disagree. Again, speaking of Tinder, not as Tinder specifically, but all the apps,
which thing
like
do you
Tinder,
disagree with?
Bumble, the fact that if we got rid of it, that we would see no change. I don't think
Okay,
that's
what
true at
would
all.
improve if
I
we
think
got
that
rid
we
of
would
Tinder?
have so a lot of the times, especially young people that I've talked to, they go into Tinder instead of, not in addition to. So instead of going out and trying to meet women and interact with people in real life, they do so on Tinder as a kind of
I don't think this
shortcut.
happens.
I think that it
totally
absolutely
disagree.
happens. This is
No.
something
If a guy gets invited to, I don't think there's ever been a time where a high school college kid is like, oh, I got invited to a party.
I'm
I
not
think I'm
talking
gonna
high
swipe
school.
Tinder instead.
I'm talking
Well, what are we
after
talking
high
about?
school. So after people get out of their house, go away from home, whether they go to college or in the workplace or these things, like, I think that a lot of them use Tinder as a substitute for going out, right? Or
Yeah, but like, let's
to.
say that we get rid of Tinder. Are all these tech guys going to start like going out to the bar to find women? No,
I
they're going
think
to sit on Discord and play League of
not
Legends.
insignificant portion would, actually. I think a not insignificant portion would, again, because they don't have that kind of false hope that these dating apps are giving them. They would
I don't
say,
think
okay,
anybody. No. I disagree. I disagree with every single thing you say. I disagree. You say false hope. I feel like I hear relentlessly people shit on Tinder these days. Is there really a whole bunch of? I feel like the common thing I hear is Tinder is hopeless. I can never find anyone on Tinder. Where's all the false hope at? I totally disagree that if you knock out Tinder, that all of a sudden you're gonna be like, well, fuck, I can't swipe on Tinder anymore. I'm gonna go to the bar and try to raise up some chicks, or I'm gonna go down to the club and like dance a little bit. Like, I just totally disagree. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, we're going to try to get some other people involved real quick. Kidology, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating hearing men telling women how women think, and it's. I think that's the most unattractive thing in a lot of these conversations, which men don't really appreciate because it's always reduced to it ultimately being about looks. But
I love when women tell me what they think is attractive to try to control me.
I mean, Kidology, you've said before that you identify as an incel. Is that still true?
Yes, I'm involuntarily celibate. Yes, but I don't blame anybody else for that except myself.
Wait, you're involuntarily celibate?
Oh no, you're about to go down a whole rabbit hole.
You can't get laid.
No, I can't. I blame myself and
Girl, I'm gonna make tonight.
Oh no, stop! Don't do it! Don't go down this rabbit hole.
A Tinder profile with your face and like make a cute little bio, and I'm just gonna start swiping. And girl, I promise you, I could get you laid.
That happens.
Well, it's not about getting
incels
laid.
Did that to me, actually.
Actually, let me help Kidology out here. I'm going to help Kidology out here. I'm going to come to her defense because this is.
I don't think she needs you.
Oh, I thought you were gonna. Okay,
actually,
yeah.
No. It's not a shootout, but I'm going to help her out because when it comes to the incel conversation, we oftentimes reduce it to men just want to have sex, and that's why the very first thing that you asked her, Lauren, was why don't you just go on Tinder? You can just swipe and you can just. But that's not what she desires. What she wants is an actual long-term relationship. As such is what a lot of young men want in the first place.
No, an incel implies like somebody who you typically a man, but somebody who cannot involuntarily celibate.
That's true. I actually think that it's a silly word, but I use it colloquially because you guys understand it. But the truth of the incel is that it is not simply I can't have sex. It's I want to have a relationship. Now, sure, there's some men that probably fit that, of course, but that's not the main group of these young men. When you go and you talk to them, you find that they want to have long-term relationships.
Kidology, are you waiting until like marriage or love or something to have sex?
Oh,
Are you waiting for marriage or love or something before you have sex?
No, not necessarily. No, it just hasn't happened. So it's primarily to do with like my situation, my circumstances. I think the men that I interact with, my demographic, being a racial minority has definitely contributed to that. So yeah.
But you're
there's a lot.
hot. Shut the fuck up. What are you like? I don't think.
I mean, it's not about how I look. It's about a lot more than that. I think this is one thing that incels also get wrong. They think that it's all about how they look, and that ultimately that's why they can't get, woman in relationships. But a lot of it is about personality. It's about characteristics.
Okay,
about specific traits.
I understand men having trouble getting laid, even if they're a good-looking man, if they have like a bad personality. Or
Why can you understand that actually?
Because women are choosier. However,
based on
however, men will fuck a hot piece of fruit. So you're telling me that you can't get, like, I don't understand how a woman could be an incel. That doesn't make, like, men will fuck literally anything.
Well, I still think that's
yeah, but what you're saying is, that there's something's wrong with her, and she's also saying something's wrong with her. So,
but there's no exactly. Yeah, and also men aren't choosy. Men just look at looks. That's all, and she's hot.
That's not true. That's not. It's not that men just look at looks. First of all, that's what people do. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go on.
Sorry. I mean, that's not true at all. I mean, I've been for about 3 months. I was going out with this guy, like 3 months up till now. I was going out with this guy. In terms of looks, I'm a lot better looking than he is. And he ghosted me about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, because you wouldn't fuck him after 3 months.
No, it wasn't because I wouldn't F him after 3 months. It's because... No, it's because he said something very inappropriate, and I pushed back, and he didn't like that. So there you go. Relationships are not as cut and dry as it is presented for most people.
Yeah, perhaps they might not be, but I think the problem I have with this conversation as a first mover, right? Well, there's actually two. The first is that young men always have to do like something like to change, right? And we assume that these men haven't done that and they haven't tried that. That's the first thing. But the second thing is we pretend that women aren't shallow in some areas. That women don't want men that are sexually attractive.
This actually brings something up, though, and something that get lost in this conversation because it is so male focused. Is that the loneliness rates among women are also skyrocketing. It's a problem, and it's not gendered, right? I think it manifests in different ways between men and women, right?
Wait, hold on. I don't think that's true.
I think it is true.
I thought that over COVID, wasn't it something like wasn't it like over 50% of young men reported having less than one person, meaning 0 people to talk to during COVID? And for women, wasn't that number like 20%? Wasn't it way lower?
But they're both trending up, is what I'm saying.
Sure, they might both be trending up, but I think the problem is significantly higher in terms of men maintaining fulfilling relationships versus women. They might be both trending up a little, although those numbers
having someone to speak to doesn't mean the relationship is fulfilling.
Actually, this is from 2022. On a general scale, women have reported having higher levels of loneliness than men.
Women over 50 are basically the most demonized and ignored group of demographic of people, but nobody cares about them.
Well, I don't think that's even true. I'm pretty sure it's men that reach those ages because they kill themselves like greater than any other cohort, I think, in the entire United States. I don't know about it. Maybe it's different in the UK, but...
that's because men are more successful at suicide attempts. It doesn't mean that they...
That's because men want to kill them. If you don't kill yourself when you try to kill yourself, it's because you don't want to kill yourself. Men kill themselves more because they want to kill themselves.
It also depends on the method. Men use guns more
because they want to die. Nobody that wants to die eats Benadryl, okay? Men kill themselves more because they want to kill themselves.
How do you know this? Do you know what's going on in a woman's head? Because you don't.
Because like 52% of women are already on antidepressants. They know what these medications do, okay? Eating 10 Benadryl is not the way to kill yourself. If you want to kill yourself, you'll kill yourself. You'll find a way to do it. There's plenty of things in life that can kill us if you really want to die.
Men are better at a lot of things. Killing themselves is just another thing.
Just another way
we should just argue that women are so low IQ that they're
But here's the thing: we keep obfuscating this one thing, right? So again, when it comes to the problem, we say it's really male focused and like men have to do like something.
I mean, when I was using Tinder a lot, I was absolutely like a massive boy. I don't even think I probably wasn't even fucking relationship material.
So you think that okay? So like, what did you bring your experience for?
What do you mean? I just wanted
Why did
to say
you
that he
bring
got
up
laid on
the
Tinder.
example?
He just wanted to say he got laid on.
I'm saying,
one of those humble
I would like
brags,
to put that out there. I'd like to submit that to the panel. I am a sex haver as well.
Verified sex haver.
I was saying that I was saying that women will fuck like undateable guys that are just like these boys that are good at Tinder and they have Tinder game and shit, but they're not like relationship material.
But in general, you have some bad relationships, you learn what to avoid, and then you get older and then you don't fall for the same traps. For guys, it might be getting attracted to crazy girls that lie about being on birth control. For girls, it might be being attracted to tall bad boys with questionable histories, but they really want to settle down with me because I'm special, right? Like everybody learns these things as you get a little bit older. That's what happens.
Well, quite ironically, they don't, because the incels seem to not be able to figure it out, for one. But for two,
because they're not having enough experiences.
Because they're not having the experience. Yeah.
Well, okay, so then one, how are we even supposed to help these guys out in the first place if we're not having the experiences? But two, why again are we pretending that women can't ascertain who's going to be a good partner and who isn't?
I already said, for one, it's because the only way to do it is to be in spaces with women. You can't train.
You can't read a book. Hold on, Destiny. You can't read a book. You can't talk to older people that have actually had successful relationships. You only have to have bad relationships to learn them.
That's generally how you learn. You learn through relationships. I mean, you can have better relationships modeled for you, and then you can start off on a better foot, of course. People coming from an abusive household probably have to learn a whole lot more than people come from really, really healthy households.
Okay, but that would be pretty obvious, right?
We got about
that's
5
why I
minutes
just said
left
it,
on this topic.
But it's
Women
not a
are able
binary
to-
thing. It's not like you either know everything, you don't know anything, but you learn a little bit as you grow.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and end that topic there. We'll go through closing statements real quick. So we'll start with Wick.
Yeah. This is a difficult situation because the solution is simple, but it is hard to accomplish. It's hard to help them as well for a couple reasons. A lot of them are resistant to help because they're bitter. They want to blame everyone else. But also, much like trying to teach your older relatives technology, it's not something they're familiar with, and it's very frustrating to do. So often you give up or pawn it on to someone else. Trying to teach someone who is an incel how to relate and work with women in a way that is personal and helpful is equally as frustrating. They will resist you. The simple concepts you try to get across to them become very hard to do so. And so a lot of people just don't help them because it's very frustrating to do. We need to change that. We need to, and I wish we had talked more about solutions. We need, as a society, to destigmify being an incel. We need that not to be an insult anymore, and we need to help these young men and young women too, if that happens to be the case, learn how to get what they want out of life. That's all.
Awesome. Destiny.
What is even the closing statement on this? I don't even. We talked about like 20 things. People need to be in warm spaces. If you're an incel and you're trying to get women, I mean, like Tinder's probably not going to work well for you. You have to practice talking to women, and you need to find warm spaces where you can develop social skills by talking to women without like just trying to fuck them either. Like friendships with women are probably the first step to learning how to fuck women. And if you skip that step in grade school, high school, college, then you got to find some other way to develop it post college.
All right. Base, you had me going for a second there. Kidology had said that she can't get laid, and you immediately jumped in and said, I think I can help Kidology out. I thought you were propositioning her on the panel for a second. That was going to be a first.
We've tried it before. We could probably stand to chat more often, but no, I mean,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, we talk with.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're familiar. So I understand her plight better than most is what I was saying. I could articulate it. That's all. But
all right, let's hear your closing statements, sir.
So my closing statements are, I think a lot of people do understand that the incel does need to work on himself. And I would actually go the extra step and say it's not simply just working on your physical attributes, like with good hygiene. And it's not simply just having a good personality when you go talk to someone. You actually need to focus on your virtue and the purpose behind having a relationship and why you want to be with a woman in the first place, which I think is very important because I'm going to tie it all together. It's interesting to me that Destiny says the reason why a lot of these women have these bad relationships is just inexperience and the fact that they just don't know the correct model. They have to learn through bad experiences. The truth of the matter is, one, lots of trauma with these women ends up damaging them. A lot of them don't recover from this trauma. A lot of them don't become better people, and they don't end up in selecting better men. We see a lot of it on Kevin Samuel's old shows.
What does this have to do with incels?
It has a lot to do with incels, right? Because women are the other half of the equation. When it comes to it, we need to have. I'm telling you, if you allow me to finish, I'm going to bring it all together. So, what's important is What we have is a system where we only tell men that they have to rise to the occasion and they have to keep doing more and more and more. And then we pretend that there's not the other half that has these expectations that these men have to continue to keep reaching. That is exactly what is going on in a lot of cases. There's a lot of trauma that a lot of young women have that bars them, a lot of young men, from even being good and even being able to enter these relationships as well in the first place. What is interesting is we always keep stopping with these men have to do something. And these men know they have to do something because there's a whole red pill ideology of which they know they have to work on their money and their status and whatnot that a lot of people didn't argue against. What we saw here is you guys argued against just the first principle that women want men who are physically attractive. Like, we can't even get past that. So until we can actually start having a more honest conversation, honest discussion, that is, some women are shallow and some women don't seek out actually good virtues that will help them have a long-term relationship, we can only fix one half of the problem. Men need to become better. Well, great job. They already know this. When are we going to get the young ladies to come meet them on the other side and also do something to become better?
All right. Thank you, sir. Lauren.
Okay. Just, I guess we're in closing, but I just have to wrap up with what Base just said. It's not, the women are not the ones with the problem. It is the men who are the ones with the problem. It's not that anyone needs to get better, but women are not struggling with the lack of sex or struggling in any resolve whatsoever. The people who are struggling are the incels. Now, as they resolve themselves and as, not resolve, but as the issue gets better and as they work on social ineptitudes and they become more capable of dealing with women, that will resolve any issue that there was in society in the first place. It's not like women who are currently struggling. It's the
This is
men
why we need
who are
Kevin Samuels
struggling.
back.
Well, exactly, because they literally called in the Kevin Samuels show, though they are
Okay.
struggling.
Not
But-
interrupting.
I'm sorry.
Not interrupting
Oh,
other panelists. Closings challenge level impossible.
Okay, so when it comes to the immediacy problem of the lack of sex, women are not struggling with that problem. As men resolve their issues with their, then that's going to create new issues in society, and then women have their loneliness issues, which also need to be resolved. And even though they're interwoven, they're separate. And it's not about blame; it's about resolving the actual issue at hand. The issue with incels is their incapabilities of dealing in society, their basically their autismness, their inability to connect with women and people in general. A lot of this has to do with technology, and this is a large societal issue, but in order for you to resolve the large societal issue, you have to look inward at yourself, and the people with the problem are the ones who have to, in the end, resolve the problem. I guess that could be encouraged through classes such as in high school, having more opportunities for socializing, longer lunch breaks, more proms and dances and stuff like this. But in the end, it's still a men's issue.
All right. Smith.
Okay, I agree with Bass that it is more than just a men's issue. It's a double-sided problem. It's a societal issue. I think that men are the ones that are dealing with it, but I think if we want to change it, we have to change some of the things that we've been leaning on for so long. I think that if you want to do, I think his solution is to like do kind of the red pill thing, and you play into it. So men need to be better, but also blame women because women are shallow and all that. But I don't agree with that. What I think is that you have to. I think women are gatekeeping being loved, or the object in the relationship between men and women. And if we want men to know how to be loved and how to experience that kind of intimacy, we have to be willing to love men. And we don't really love men. We just want men to be automatons that we exploit for their physical labor. And we want women to be like people that we exploit for their emotional and their sexual labor. And we still have not bridged that gap.
All right. And then Kidology.
Well, yes, I agree with Baz on most things. I think that incels, even if they are not necessarily oppressed in the way that some other groups are, I think that they definitely feel oppressed. And we should acknowledge that, and we should understand why, and try to understand and grapple with why they feel that way. I think in terms of helping them, it ultimately comes from not just help on the side of mental health services, like therapy, which I think really needs to come a long way to sort of meet incels and meet the current sort of understanding and data about inceldom and their demographic. But I think importantly, incels need to also stop victimizing themselves perpetually and ultimately justifying sort of the state that they find themselves in and projecting all that blame onto everybody else. I think that, for instance, I think another issue is that we ultimately reduce the problems that a lot of young men and women face today with regards to intimacy, to sex, like to celibacy, being involuntarily celibate. And I think that's wrong. I think, well, at least most women have bad sex more so than good sex. Most women have undergone some kind of sexual trauma or sexual assault. And I think men also ultimately reduce like sort of happiness to having an orgasm or whatever they see in pornography. And I think we need to have more honest conversations about a sort of philosophy behind sexual intimacy with another person. I think that we have really lost something there. I mean, not that we've ever had it, but I think we sabotage ourselves in reducing everything to a lack of sex and just seeing sex as the ultimate goal, when there is so much more to that equation and so much more to the relationships that will actually make us potentially happy.
All right. Thank you, Kidology. So here is our third and last topic. Do women have more fulfilling relationships than men? And should men mimic women's relationships? This one, we're going to go ahead and start with Destiny for your opening statement. You got 1 minute, sir.
If we're talking friendships, it seems like men have difficulty communicating or expressing emotion or feeling in friendships. That has to do with that thing for COVID I saw. I don't remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure that like over COVID, like men reported having way fewer people to have like emotionally in-depth conversations with than women did. Women seem to be on average happier with the quality of the emotional depth that their friendships have, and men seem to not have that same depth. So I think that there are some pointers. I don't know if I would say like copy women as much. I don't think women have like a monopoly on not being emotionally retarded. I think that men could probably do a little bit better at communicating feelings openly and honestly with other male friends, because it seems like we have a really big, difficult time with that.
All right. Kidology.
Not necessarily. No, I think that there is, at least based on my reading and thinking about this, there is this myth, I think, that women have better relationships than men. Recently, I think it was last year, a study of 50,000 into like sort of men's and women's relationships and sort of satisfaction reports were compiled and analyzed. And they found that men and women had sort of equal satisfaction levels. And I think the issue is that when it comes to relationships between men and women, like especially in marriage and relationships, things seem to change in terms of things becoming a lot more emotionally dependent on women, and the man sort of steps back into his sort of Madonna complex and into enjoying having a woman doing a lot of the satisfaction as opposed to him. So I think that I don't think it is that men need to mimic women's relationships. I think men need to I think we all need to encourage each other and in relationships with each other to do a lot more in terms of recognizing other people and a bit more self-awareness.
All right. Lauren, 1 minute.
Sorry if I ramble. Yeah, I was just gonna say, when you look at the term fulfilling, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot, because Destiny mentioned more, like men have fewer. I don't really think that has anything to do with the fulfillingness. Where you look at like absences of relationships, for instance, when a father is absent, this seems to have an extremely impactful effect, especially upon a son. So like when you look at father-son relationships versus mother-daughter relationships, it seems when you look at the impacts on life, that relationship actually has more weight and importance. And then I would also say just brothers versus sisters, there always seems to be stronger relationships there. So if you're breaking it down to familial aspects as opposed to just friendship aspects, I think that changes it. And then as for whether or not men should mimic women's relationships, no, we have different societal standards. We have different ways that we've developed relationships as a society. And I think that men need to stay masculine. So no.
All right, Smith.
I think that I don't know about relationships themselves, but I think that men need to not maybe mimic, but men need to learn from the roles that women take in relationships and adapt some of those things into their own roles. They need to be able to take from relationships some of the things that women take from them, and women need to take some of the things from relationships that men take from relationships. And I think we're like quartering ourselves off to specific, like what Kidology said. She said like men slip back into this Madonna complex role, and they get all their enjoyment from the experience of the woman and stuff. And I think that we need to be more holistic, and we need to because I mean the incels have already stepped into their Madonna complex. It's just they're doing it with their waifu and they don't even have a girlfriend. So
all right, Wick.
Yeah. I think that men and women both, right? People in general need at some point to learn how to be happy, right? Once you learn that, your relationships will be fulfilling. I think this is a problem that's internal in nature in a lot of cases. Yes, it could be absolutely affected by external forces and things like that. It's a lot easier to be more fulfilled or happy when you're in a good financial situation, for example. But I think overall, there are some people you will meet who will never be happy regardless of their circumstances, and I think that's because they've never learned how. I think it's a skill. I think it's something that we can learn and something that we could try to do. Whether women are more happy in general, I don't know. I think I take issue with the genderification of this. I think this is something that we just need to teach people. Anyway, that's my statement.
All right, and base 1 minute, sir.
So, honestly, I do not think that women have more fulfilling relationships than men. I'm not really sure how you could really quantify that. The data I think Destiny gave us is more self-reported than anything, so I don't know why we just should believe them because they say they're more happy than the men. They could easily be lying there. I don't know if we can really extrapolate anything really substantial from that. Unfortunately, just based on my own personal experience, I've chatted with a lot of women over my lifetime, and they don't seem to be doing any better than the young men that I've chatted to in my lifetime. They seem to also be dealing with a lot of depression and loneliness and sadness. And the interesting thing is I've chatted with some women that have had great friendships, and I've had great friendships with some young men. So I don't really know if you can really, gender the conversation. And I also don't know if there's really any data we could use to really substantiate this. It seems pretty subjective whether someone's relationship is fulfilling or not.
All right. Destiny, if you want to go ahead and kick us off, good sir.
Why do I have to kick us off?
Because you were the one who had like the most disagreement with everybody else here.
I feel like from an early age, I feel like women are taught socially to work through emotions quite a bit. I think that men aren't really taught as much to work through our emotions. I think that from a very early age, women just get better social training than men. And as a result of that, I think that carries over to a lot of relationships that they have for friendships. I think there's a famous, either Chris Rock or it might be Dave Chappelle had the joke where it's like a woman comes back from seeing a girl or a guy and she's like, oh, I did this and I felt like this and blah, blah, blah. And a guy comes back and he's just like, we went to Denny's, it was 7 a.m. and we did this. And then that was it. And then that's it. Like, I think in general, I think that joke kind of encapsulates like the nature of male friendships versus female friendships. Like, I think this is, I'm just anecdotal. I'm just guessing. Like, I feel like a guy is more likely to be like, oh yeah, like John, like I'm really good friends with him. Like we chat like once every 2 years to just like catch up. Like, I feel like it's a really guy thing to say. Whereas like women tend to be more keeping up with like familial connections and keeping up with friends and having more emotionally fulfilling conversations.
I don't know, but that seems a little bit more trivial, right? If I talk to John after 2 years and everything is great and wonderful and we can still be open and emotional, wouldn't that reflect how strong our friendship is despite the time?
Yeah, if you're
No, because it means in 2 years you haven't shared any like. I mean, like I can say it's an acquaintance you can talk to, but it's not somebody that you're relying on for any kind of like emotional or life support, right?
But it would be if this is my friend I just talked to. It's been 2 years, and now we're opening, we're talking to each other, we're catching up. Let's say life has brought us apart from each other, and we came back, and we're still equally as emotional as we were before. Wouldn't that show that the relationship would stood the test of time? Versus a young lady, right, who says she needs to talk to someone like consistently in order to maintain her relationship.
No, it's barely. It's easy to maintain friendship with somebody you're only talking to them once every 2 years. Like,
I like. How is that easy to maintain if you're not talking to them?
Because you don't see any of the bad things. You just romanticize it. It's a guy that you meet every 2 years, and he's like, cool.
That's an assumption, though. You assume that
you get an assumption. It's de facto. To spend more time around somebody and to maintain a friendship through multiple interactions and engagements shows that the metal of that friendship is much stronger.
Yeah, but you're assuming that it's not.
Let's say that you get a rattlesnake, it bites your dick. A rattlesnake bites your dick, okay, and you need someone to suck out the poison. How many of your guy friends would be willing to do that?
All of them.